So you're thinking about giving gouache painting a try and you're not sure where to get started. I thought I would put a little video together to show you some of my materials and suggestions for ways to get started without having to get too many materials. But I did want to give you a lot of options, so I know that you see a lot of materials, but this is just so you have choices. I'm going to start with the most important material, which is our gouache paint. And the brand, there's a lot of brands out there, and I've only tried 3 different brands and they've all been really good. It's been the Winsor Newton, Holbein, and then also Shinhan gouache. But there are many other professional gouache paints out there that I've heard a lot of other artists use, and they're really nice as long as it is professional grade or says designer gouache on it. That is what you want to get, because that is the paint that's going to give you the most versatility. You'll be able to use it in many, many more ways if you get paint that is professional. And then the other thing I want to say about the paint is you use a lot of white, so make sure that you invest in like a bigger tube of the white. And I usually like to keep them in plastic bags, like Ziploc bags, or even just some type of bag after I close it, because sometimes I've been known to not close my paints all the way, the little tube tops, and it can dry up on you inside the tube. So in terms of your white paint, the one that you want to get is either permanent white or titanium white, because those two provide you with the ability to mix colors, but then also they are very opaque and they provide a lot of coverage. The other white paints are fine if you are going to use them just to mix colors, but I don't like to get 2 different types of white, so I get the permanent or the titanium white. As far as your surfaces for painting, gouache is super versatile and it can be used on almost any surface, and there's many surfaces I haven't tried myself but I've heard you can use, like wood and glass. But I love paper, and so all of the things I'm going to show you will be either some type of board or paper. The least expensive material that you could use is either mixed media paper or illustration board. This, if you see, is kind of like firm and stiff, and I like it, and I get the really big sheets and then I just cut it down. Some stores will carry illustration board pre-cut for you. It's a little bit more expensive, but it's still a very inexpensive option, and gouache looks beautiful on this. My understanding is that years ago gouache was used mostly on illustration board because it was used for a lot of advertisement and campaigns and illustration, and it didn't provide that glare when you photographed it the way that other paints might. So this is a good option. Mixed media paper is awesome as well, and I like to use the colored ones. I like the gray, the beige, and also it comes in black. And there's like a really pretty stone blue. Strathmore makes a lot of mixed media papers, and I like to buy them in pads, so I have a lot of paper, and it's great for exercises. This sketchbook is a Stillman and Burn Nova. I like to paint outside a lot or in my car when it's too cold, and this also has that toned paper in it, and it just takes the gouache paint really nicely. You just can't do super wet washes on this, which I like to do in the beginning of my paintings. This sketchbook is also mixed media paper, so you could buy mixed media paper in a loose format or in a pad, or in sketchbooks. This one is a very smooth surface, which is nice if you're working with your gouache nice and creamy. If you want to do super wet washes, you just have to be careful not to over mix and blend, because you get this kind of effect, which can be good if you want that, but then you could get really cool effects like this, but you also can layer really nicely. So these are less expensive than what I'm going to show you next, which is watercolor paper. And this is a watercolor board, which just is basically a hard board that has watercolor paper adhered to it. And I like to use this a lot if it's not going to be like a practice painting, and it's something that I think I might want to, that is just something a little more special. So it's on a hardboard. Watercolor paper also comes in pads. This is one of my favorite types of papers. And I would recommend the cold pressed. I like 100% cotton paper the best because I still use a lot of watercolor, and this provides me the option to do watercolor or gouache. And it's just able to handle your medium when it's really wet and flowy in a really nice way, for blendability. 140-pound or heavier cold pressed. And the watercolor paper also comes in blocks, which I should have brought one out for you, but basically it's like a pad, but everything is gummed around the edges except for one little section, and you use one sheet at a time, but it prevents you from having to tape the paper down if you're going to use it really wet. And obviously it also comes, a lot of sketchbooks will carry also cold press paper. This is an etcher sketchbook, which I love, and the cold press paper has more tooth to it and a little more texture, so it allows you the flexibility to do really wet washes, but also to do dry brushing, like here on this. If you see, like, there's a lot of dry brush effects. So I like that. I like having a lot of options for different types of brush strokes. And also, there is black watercolor paper. This I love gouache on. If you want a dark background, this will take the flowy, watery washes really well because it's watercolor paper. But you could also use black mixed media paper. You just want to use the paint at a thicker consistency. So here's one of my toned paper ones. I think this one it worked fine because I didn't use too much water, but if you use a lot of water, you just have to be careful. So I know this was really lengthy, but I wanted to give you various options for surfaces. And recently what I started doing, because I wanted to be able to make some pieces that were frameable and you didn't have to put them under glass and mat them and then have to mount them on something, I cut some of my watercolor paper, this one, sorry, I stacked this watercolor paper, I cut it down and I adhered it to this hardboard. And then after I paint with it, I'll seal it with a cold wax. And this could go straight into a frame. It doesn't have to be under glass. So that's another option if you want to make your own. And I almost forgot this guy. This is a mini one, but there's a lot of sizes of aqua boards, which are boards that have a surface that has been treated, especially for watercolor. But there are lots of gouache artists out there that also use this. When I work on a really smooth surface, I find it a little bit more challenging, but I feel like if I were to work thickly the whole time, or at least a little bit thick the whole time, it would work out great, because I've seen some art out there, gouache art made on this surface, and it looks beautiful. So those are choices for our surfaces. As far as your mixing space, you want to get a palette, and anything can be a palette. You can pull out a porcelain or ceramic dish from your kitchen. Just don't use it again for food. I always go to a lot of the home goods sections in stores, and I look at all their ceramic stuff because I'm obsessed with it. But if I don't want something heavy like that, I'll also get some of these acrylic ones. I've repurposed boxes that I've gotten other items in, like this little box. I don't even remember what was in here, but it's acrylic, so I can use it as a mixing space. And you can even use just like a container lid, anything really. But if you want to keep your paint from drying out while you're working, while you're painting with it, or if you want to be able to store it after your painting session because you didn't finish up your paint and you don't want it to dry up like all of my paints and all of my ceramic palettes, there is this Stay Wet palette, and there's various Stay Wet palettes out there. I have another one that right now is out of commission. I need to look for it, but basically it's got a sponge in it that you wet and you wring it out, and then you put it underneath the special paper that comes with it. You can make something like this at home too, and I can show you how I learned from Sarah Burns, from Sarah Burns Studio. She showed us how to make our own Stay Wet palette a few years back, and I tried that for a little bit before I found this one. But you put your paints on here, you make sure this is moist, and then when you're done painting, it keeps them fresh while you're painting, but then when you're done painting, you just seal it, put it away, and then you're able to work with that paint again in a creamy consistency. In terms of other just random supplies, I like to have tape, because I like to tape down my edges sometimes on my paper, and I get, I like Holbein's soft tape that David Becker introduced to me, and he actually gave me this one. And I love it because it doesn't rip my paper. And the other one that I've liked, and I think it came with Sarah Burns gouache painting courses, and I think she said it's a Hahnemühle brand tape that doesn't really tear the paper, and it does a good job of keeping your paper down and keeping the borders clean. Paper towels or cloth towels. I always keep paper towels, even though I use my cloth towel a lot, because sometimes I'll get too much paint on something and I want to reactivate it and pick it up, and I use my paper towels for that. And I buy these blue shop towels. They're auto shop towels because you can rinse them out and just let them dry again and reuse them many, many, many times. Spray bottle with water in it is a must. And I like to have either separate containers. I just found these and I thought they were so beautiful, but a lot of times I work from containers that I buy at organization sections of stores like this. I think it's like a makeup organization or something, or office organization. It's just an acrylic container, and it has 3 separate little sections, and there's a whole lot other like these out there in different formats. But I keep one with my clean water, and then I like to keep one section for my warm colors when I'm cleaning up my brush, and then for my cool colors so they don't get contaminated, especially if I'm going to be working in a long session. You obviously could just do one of these and you just have to get up and be cleaning it out because you don't want to contaminate your stuff. So brushes, this is the last item on the list, I think. There are lots of options for brushes as well. You don't have to get specific types of brushes. What I would say is, because I've seen a lot of artists that make really beautiful work, and they use anything from brushes from the craft store, from the arts and crafts store, the really cheap ones, to mixed media brushes or acrylic brushes. Watercolor brushes is what I started when I was first learning gouache, because that's what I had. I paint in watercolors a lot, but then I got really lucky and I found some brushes made especially for gouache from the Etcher company. The only thing is theirs are a bit small, so if you're working small, they're fine, but if you want to work on a bigger surface, I felt like they were a bit small. And then I got super lucky, and with the courses in gouache that I was taking from Sarah Burns Studio and Craft Ammo, they would send you, I had already bought a set from her because she had her own set of brushes, but then when I took the courses from her, every month I would get different brushes with different shapes. Like these, I know it's like, you don't need all of this, but it's nice to have it. And they're made especially for gouache, so they're soft, but they have bounce back. And so they're firm enough that you can work with gouache at a thicker consistency, but they don't hold as much water as a lot of the watercolor brushes, except for the bigger ones, which are made for wet washes like these. But water control is super important with gouache, so it's good to get brushes that don't hold too much water, or if they do, to make sure that you're constantly dabbing it off. So I'm sorry this is a super long video, but I hope that it was helpful and that it got you excited to try gouache. It is a wonderful medium. I've fallen in love with it over the past 1.5 years, and I love it, and I hope that you'll love it too, and that you'll give it a go.